Athletics here with head cross country and track and field coach Matt Morris. We're also joined here with cross country and track coach Josh Sanderlin. Guys, thanks for joining us here this morning. We'll kind of just dive into it a little bit, Coach. Coach, both you guys feel free to jump in whenever. Successful off season for you guys, I would say, in the track realm. And here we are kicking things off with cross country. Just kind of give us your opening thoughts about how excited you are to have the athletes back on campus, what happened over summer and in the past semester as well.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'd start with, obviously we had a great summer with, Reese and Helen and Leah and Margot and some other people doing really well. I think the last year we knew that we had some kids that were going into that Olympic cycle with that kind of be in the middle of their circle, and we're very fortunate to be able to provide those opportunities to make that a semester for them. So it was a little bit interesting for us. We had a lot of young kids last year that got a chance to compete. But we were definitely looking forward to this year, and you don't want to start counting your chickens before they hatch. But so we were all, I think, excited going into the season. With the number of, and it's a good problem, with the number of athletes we have that are able to compete over the summer, it definitely changes the fall sometimes as those kids are doubling back and getting ready for another season. Mm-hmm. So I think we know less sometimes coming into the season, like where are we at, right? We kind of get everybody. So once we got back and we got everybody together, they're all healthy, and then we did our first time trial, and that was extremely successful. And then we had our first real practice, and I think we knew then that we have a lot of good pieces in places, and if we can continue to keep that going, we should be in a good spot.
Josh, I'll throw things over to you right here. Lots of success in the long distance events. You see Margot in the steeplechase have a successful nationals. You see Matisse, you see all these guys, Caleb, Reese, all these guys having lots of success in the long distance. How does that kind of excite you? I know that's more of what was going on the track side of things. How does that kind of get you excited for cross country season?
Yeah, like Matt talked about, we were definitely looking forward to this year's, kind of things coming together and crystallizing. And we didn't have a great idea of what would happen last outdoor season, so it was really cool to see a lot of people step up and do some pretty special things. But yeah, everybody who's good at long stuff on the track is also good at stuff on the grass. So yeah, it's going to be a great year for cross country as well as track.
Coach, kind of talk about those time trials. You were the other day at the luncheon. We're highlighting some of these newbies that are going to get their opportunity here. Talk about some of those time trials. I know you had the Leah and Camille right there with you who really impressed you. Kind of talk about what you saw out of those time trials.
Yeah, and I think every program does some version of that. It's kind of like your measuring stick things to see like where you're at from year to year, and then as you develop your training plan, you kind of, what are you starting with, right? And so we do a 4K time trial, and we really do it to see, with very little coaching, and we stagger them so they can't draft off each other and work together to see like what do we have to work with. And generally, you'll from year to year, you'll have 2 or 3 people that look great, but there's gaps, and they kind of group up. And what we saw this year was we have a lot of not only, I think, chronologically older student athletes, but we also have a lot of experience. They both made nationals last year. Women's teams made nationals 3 years in a row. So you're starting to kind of get some institutional knowledge of like what it's like to move through the season, and the things we're looking for, pacing, 1-5 splits, things like that, were really, really solid, and we had a lot of depth. I think maybe more depth than we initially thought we might. And so again, it's just the start, but seeing really good things, not only in those time trials and those early practices of how we move through space together. So I would say, pretty comfortably, we still have the rest of the season to go, but we've started the year with as many, resources and skills as we've probably ever started. So hopefully we can continue to do that and stay healthy and manifest it in some good things down the line.
You got both teams to nationals last year. They're at the national championship there in Joplin, Missouri. What do you guys feel like you need to do to get back to that spot?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the tough thing is that we don't know much about the other teams, right? And so part of it is, you're kind of balancing this dichotomy of like, you got to do what you do well, figure out what your personality is, how you guys move through space, but then also, then you got to at some point look around what everybody else is doing and figuring out how are you going to counter that, right? And so we're still in that phase of figuring out who we are and where we're going. But I do think that as we get probably halfway through the season, we need to start figuring out what it looks like in our region and at national levels to get ourselves ready to compete with some of those teams. So I think we have another probably 4 to 6 weeks of kind of checking people out and looking at race results and stuff like that before we can figure that out. But I think again we're in a good spot at this point in time. So I don't really know the answer to that question yet. We're still working on it, but I think once we get to probably the end of September, we'll have a lot better idea where we're at.
Y'all can both feel free to jump in on this one. You've got regionals, a little home cooking here for cross country. You've got it here in Denver. Then you might have to make a little bit of a adjustment at nationals going to Sacramento. That's a long way down the road. I know you're kind of thinking of it just week by week, kind of seeing how the other teams are doing. But how does that get you excited to see Denver on the schedule for postseason, and then maybe you get to go west a little bit for Sacramento?
Yeah, I'll let Josh grab that one at the beginning.
Yeah, it's great to not have to travel very far. Travel's definitely kind of a difficult thing to deal with, especially for running sometimes. So just taking a bus up to Denver makes the running a lot easier. The logistics of a schedule. As far as going to Sacramento, we know what kind of course it is. Unfortunately, it's not open for a preview race, which is kind of unfortunate. But we're definitely able to mirror what they provide just by running on grass. It's a golf course, so running on things like fast grass is important. But yeah, you have to go out and show the kids what nationals is going to be like. And so we're doing that with Chili Pepper late September. And the kids are very familiar with the Denver course at Washington Park. So yeah, we're definitely excited about that.
And I would add to that point, great points, is the regional, all of our teams in our region are at some sort of elevation for the most part. Dallas Baptist not so much, but even in South Dakota, Nebraska, they'll be 3,000-4,000 feet. Having our regionals kind of bounce back and forth between Texas and Denver. When it's in Denver, it's definitely higher elevation. So I feel like for us, it's a little bit of an advantage. Not as much of an advantage as for Western or Adams and some of the people dropping down from really high up. But it makes it tougher for some of those southern teams than when we go to Texas, right? And it's like Josh meant, it's a long travel and it's a little quicker. But that being said, our region's so competitive that you're gonna have to run right on the right. You have to run fast on the right day. If you don't, it's gonna be tough, right? And so there are some advantages, but at the end of the day, they shoot the gun, everybody runs. And the last time we were in Denver, West Texas had a phenomenal regional race, even though statistically it's snowing.
Mm-hmm.
You're bringing kids from Texas way up to elevation to run in the snow, and they just handle it great. So it's not a for sure advantage, but I think it definitely is in our favor when it's in Denver. So
Kind of talk about that schedule a little bit. You guys on September 7th head to Alamosa, then you run in the prestigious Chili Pepper Festival. I think anybody that follows the sport knows how great of a meat the Chili Pepper is, and then of course you get to finish up the regular season there in Colorado Springs. Kind of talk about that, how that schedule prepares you. You get 2 meets at elevation. I know Fayetteville is not too much at elevation, but you get 2 really good meets here in Colorado. How that kind of gives you a leg up going into the postseason against some of those teams that don't run at elevation.
yeah, and I think the elevation is obviously important. You know what I mean? I think, but obviously when we go to Sacramento, right, it's not going to be as important because there's not any elevation. So I think, but being able to train every day at elevation helps, and I think also having high efforts at elevation helps. Part of why we're going to Alamosa. I think as much or more than that, though, is we focus on the speed changes on the course. So really the difference with cross country versus track is the track is just flat. So the speed changes are man-made, right? You're reacting to speed changes. So the men's 1500 Olympics, if Ingebrigtsen just goes to the front and starts dropping 54s, well, that's the speed change. Everybody now has to account for it, right? But in cross country, the speed changes are built into the course. So everybody knows where they're at. It's how do you manage those speed changes or lack thereof. And so we're trying to mimic as much as we can, the races we're going to see towards the end of the year. And some years it changes. So I think that's probably another factor as well.
Josh, who are you kind of individual-wise? Who are you really excited to see here this fall in the cross-country schedule, men or women?
Men or women? That's such a hard question because there's so I don't want to blow those guys up, but there's 4 or 5 people where I'm like, oh, good, they're gonna be good. person.
Give me your list. Give me your
Yeah,
list.
okay.
It doesn't have to be one person.
Okay, I got to give flowers to 4 or 5 people here. I think we brought in Leah this
Got
year.
him, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bringing in Leah, we have high expectations for her on the track, but we didn't really know what she was going to look like for cross country. And she's just, professional, very well put together, and super composed on the course, which is rare for somebody who's not super experienced with cross country. John Sweep, coming in as a redshirt freshman last year, going to race cross country this time, is going to be, he looks very strong. Camille, we just had a workout a couple days ago, and Camille just crushed it. Looked amazing. Jaden looks great. So there's 3 or 4 people where the kind of people who you need to step up in order for the teams to be, really, really good. Kind of look like they definitely can do that.
And to that point, I think that's a great point, and 100% agree with all those, is really if your goal is to really finish high at the national meet, it's not really about your first 2 or 3 runners. Everyone's first 2 or 3 runners are very good. It's the thing that separates those teams is your 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th runner competitive, and some of those kids that we weren't really sure if they were going to be are showing signs of being able to be right in the group. And to be honest with you, some of the people that maybe on paper we were looking at like, hey, maybe it'd be 5, 6, 7 runners who are finishing second, third,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, well that changes some things. So from that standpoint, I think our depth and again our 1-5 split is really, really good. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, guys, I appreciate your time. This 12 minutes went by quick. Appreciate you guys joining us here this morning. Head coach Matt Morris and Josh Sanderlin joining us. The CSU Pueblo cross country team kicks off their 2024 campaign September 7th there in Alamosa. Guys, thanks for joining us here this
Thanks,
morning.
Ty. Appreciate your time.